Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at A Larum for London, or the Siege of Antwerp, with the venturous acts and valorous deeds of the lame soldier as it hath been played by the Right Honourable the Lord Chamberlain, his servants. It's printed in 1602, it dating somewhere between 1594 and 1600, We're looking forward. I say looking forward to the Siege of Antwerp. A lot of horrible things are going to happen. It's a siege. This play kind of enjoys that. I'm just going to put a general content warning here. Death, it's just everything you expect an army to do, I think, is going to happen here. If you know Massacre at Paris, bit like that, but different because it's its own thing, I'm sure. Reading along with the carnage, reading a Burgher, Alva, and second soldier is... Yes, Rachael.
That is me. Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Gunner, Second Sergeant, and Marques is...
I am Tom from Brighton.
Reading Captains, a Second Burgher, a Soldier, and Egmont is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and you're in the army now.
Reading Sancto, English... It's just done as English. I assume it's more specific than that, actually, when we get around to it. That's just the speech prefix. A lady and first citizen in one of the scenes is...
I am Greg, and apparently it's the English governor, according to the cast list.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing why A, it's called what it's called, and B, just how much blood we can get across the stage by the end of Act 5.
Yeah, I hate to disappoint you, there isn't an act structure, but never mind. Reading Time, first citizen in a entirely different scene. Romero, Champaigne, and some of the stage directions towards the end of the session is...
Hello, I'm Angela, historian from London, and currently married to Greg, apparently. Who's my lady?
Reading Cornelius, third citizen, wife, and first soldier is...
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm a podcast producer from Seattle. That's West Coast.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading many stage directions, but I will also be reading Stump. And generally keeping everything moving forward. So, without further ado, let us dive into A Larum for London. And we start with the prologue. Enter Time.
Round, through the compass of this earthly bull, the massy substance hanging in the sky, hath fleeting time pursued this froward age, and searched the world's corrupt enormities. Here found I some, despite my hoary scalp. There found I courtiers laughed my course to scorn. In that place dainty-mouthed damsels scoff, sticking my feathers with their borrowed plumes, as though my beauty were not good enough. And now this fair concourse here met together, that have calm leisure to behold their faults within my furrowed bosom deep engraved. Like a steel forged impression, fixed firm, are met together. You will scorn my wants, laugh at my laments, look basely, fume and frown. But do so. Your proud eyes shall see the punishment of city cruelty. And if your hearts be not of adamant, reform the mischief of degenerate minds, and make you weep in pure relenting kind.
That's Time delivering the content warning there at the beginning. It's interesting little description. Does Time have a self-esteem issue? Or is actually just very confident of, you laugh now. My hoary scalp. I don't know what the sticking my feathers. Does Time have feathers? I don't recall Time.
Time flies.
Time flies. Yeah, maybe that's that. I'm curious about this image of time. I can understand that having a sort of bald cap sort of makes sense, but yeah, I don't know what this time is. Eric, then Rachel.
I'm kind of picturing that because of that line. I'm just picturing time as sort of the vultures that are drawn in Lucky Luke cartoons, in Lucky Luke cartoons, where you've got like sort of just sitting there waiting for like the sort of Undertaker to pass by, so they can make some lewd comment about life.
I quite like that. I quite like the vulture idea, considering where we are with this city. What's going to happen. The idea that it's actually a vulture would be that'd be quite grim. Rachel, and then Angela.
The earthly bull, if it means like Taurus or something like that by earthly bull, because Taurus is like an earth sign and it's a bull, then maybe even if we don't know the year, this might have been put on, premiered, and if it was staged, it might have premiered in late May or early June, because that's the period of time that the sun is supposed to be in Taurus. Maybe that's what he's. I don't know.
Angela, and then Julie.
I'm not 100% certain, but I think I have seen pictures of time with wings. Like big angel type wings. In the early modern, like woodcutty type things, which is what I'm generally looking at. But I might be wrong.
No, cool. I like wings. Julie.
I'm thinking with the whole phrase, sticking my feathers with their borrowed plumes as though my beauty were not good enough. It's the idea of women borrowing beauty from, putting feathers in their hair and stuff to distract away from their age lines. I mean, because we are a terrible people about aging and beauty.
Yeah, I found that whole sequence quite odd. Once you get to the end, it's much more straightforward. Look at all the terrible things we're about to show you. Rachel.
Could it be whatever maybe this is also because of the time, the years that you just gave for when this could have been put on or when it was written, but if there was a particular year when sticking the feathers in their hair or something was more popular, that might help pin it down in terms of what year it might have come out in. And it might be a shout out just to the audience of the fashions that they might have come dressed in.
Any other thoughts? We're probably making a bit of a meal of what is a relatively short prologue, but hey, why not? Eric?
It is. Well, also, we mentioned this earlier in the chat that it's kind of, Enter Time is kind of one of those stage directions that you get with Lord Mayor's shows a lot. And it's kind of like, I guess it makes sense because it is about a city, sort of, whereas, which, Lord Mayor's shows would have been about London, whereas this is A Larum to London. But I mean, or for London, sorry. But it's the Siege of Antwerp, so...
Yeah, you Londoners pay attention because this could happen to you. Any other thoughts before we move into the actual text of the play itself in more detail? No, excellent. Let us go into scene 1. Enter Sancto, Danila, and 2 other captains.
So leave me now, and in mine absence see that not a soldier perch upon the walls, lest by the citizens they be espied, and thereupon they grow suspicious. Be gone, and give the sentinels in charge they have an eye unto the southern port. And hear ye, if that any forces come, let them be straight received into the castle, but with as little tumult as you may.
It shall be done.
And exeunt the captains.
We must be secret as befits the care and expedition of so great a cause. Antwerp is wealthy, but withal secure. Our soldiers want the crowns they surfeit with, and therefore she must spare from forth her store to help her neighbours. Nay, She shall be forced to strip her of her pouches, and on the backs of Spanish soldiers hang her costliest robes. The plot already is determined of, and say Cornelius do but keep his word. These swilling epicures shall taste of death, whilst we survive to rifle their rich coffers.
Enter Cornelius.
Here comes the man. Welcome, Cornelius. I see you make religion of your word.
Speak softly, good my lord, lest ye be heard. The citizens are scouting hereabout.
Not one Cornelius dared approach so near. The castle shot keeps him in greater awe, and for discovery by the eye, fear not. Within this valley we may talk at large, and no man see us. Say, are you resolved to stand friend onto the Spaniard? And Sancto Domnilla vows you shall partake both spoil and honour with the best of us.
Suppose, my lord, I gave you my consent. In all the world there's not, at my command, above 600 Almines. You yourself are in the castle, scarce 1,000 strong. And what are these to sack so great a town? So populous and large as Antwerp is, the citizens, were they but politic, careful, and studious to preserve their peace, might at an hour's warning fill their streets with 40,000 well-appointed soldiers.
Aye, but they are remiss and negligent, their bodies used to soft, effeminate silks, and their nice minds set all on dalliance, which makes them fat for slaughter, fit for spoil. But say 'twere otherwise, that in their peace and days of plenty, whilst they flourished, they had foreseen the dangers that might ensue, and exercised themselves in feats of arms. Yet we being sole commanders of the castle, and that commanding them, what let is there? Were we much weaker, but we might prevail. When once the A Larum sounds like silly mice, they'll hide them in the crevice of their walls, and some for ignorance will stand amazed, and some will be so tender of their flesh as they will scorn to bear the weight of steel. No, no, brave Armain, if men ever had a fit occasion to enrich themselves and fill the vast world with their echoing fame, now is that instant put into our hands. And now may we be lords of this proud town. My mind divines no less until my feet tread a venturous measure in their streets. I shall be sick to think upon the deed.
I wish my lord as much as you detain, but such an enterprise must be well grounded, lest in performance there be found defect.
Patient eye can look upon yon turrets and see the beauty of that flower of Europe, and in it be ravished with the sight of her. Oh, she is amorous as the wanton air, and must be courted. From her nostrils comes breath as sweet as the Arabian spice. Her garments are embroidered with pure gold, and every part so rich and sumptuous as India's not to be compared to her. She must be courted. Mary herself invites and beckons us onto her sportful bed. What is he then more lumpish than rude iron? By such a lodestar may not be tempted. Oh, brave Cornelius, if within thy veins there be that heat of valour, I presume let us forflow no time till we obtain to revel in that bower of earthly bliss.
My lord, lies to me, I'm getting a very strange echo. I'm sorry, I keep hesitating.
It's the initial response when you're to Greg. It's howl around in Greg briefly,
Okay.
And then almost a second afterwards it cuts out and returns to normal.
Okay, as long as it's not bothering anybody else. Yeah. My lord, what lies in me you shall dispose. My regiment of Almines and myself will on the first assault revolt to you. Means space, I'll give you close intelligence of anything the citizens pretend. But as I said, what makes this to the spoil of such a mighty city as this is, unless we be confirmed with more supply.
Behold this scroll, and be resolved in that. From Maastricht first there comes 1,000 horse, beside 500 foot, under the guiding of Don Alonso de Verdugo. Then from Leer doth Julian de Romero bring 500 foot. From Delft 2,000 more follow the conduct of Emmanuel. The Duke of Alva likewise brings his power, and for better colour to delude these credulous inhabitants of Antwerp. He causeth it be published, he is dead, and that his soldiers guard his body hither, to have it shipped for Spain to be interred. Which, well, may serve to shadow his approach. The rest by night shall have their entrance, so that within 2 days I make account we shall be gathered to a perfect head of at the least 6,000 Spaniards.
Ay, marry, my lord, this soundeth somewhat like. Now dares Cornelius promise victory. But how intends your lordship to begin and give an entrance to this business? You know the Antwerpians never yet took part in any action against his majesty, but have remained as neutral, neither aiding the Prince of Orange nor offending you. How will you then enkindle flames of war and take occasion to commence your quarrel?
Why? Anyway, it shall be thus, Cornelius. I'll charge the master gunner of the castle to make a shot or two upon the town. And when they come to know the cause of it, I'll say it was because they do not sink. The Prince of Orange's ships, but suffered them to lie so near within the live Escalde, which notwithstanding we precisely know to hover thereabouts to no end else but to safe conduct victuals to the town. Yet this excuse will serve to cloak our heads and show some reason for what after follows.
It cannot be but good, my noble lord, and shortly, as their daily custom is, changing the governor and other burghers, intend a solemn banquet at the State House. Even then, and at that place, give you direction, the gunner take his level. 'Twill affright and strike the greater terror to their souls.
Enough, I'll play the music to their meat, and send out revellers into the room, as some of them shall have caroused their last. The most I crave is that Cornelius will be as constant as he hath professed.
Once more, my lord, I gauge my hand with yours, and as he is a soldier and a knight, Cornelius vows to be a friend to Spain.
I take thy word, fair knight, and back again. Return the like to thee. Both I and mine forever vow to love and honour thee. Now break off we our secret conference, and closely as we came unto this place, so let us circumspectly make retreat. Walk thou into the town as if thou hadst but only come abroad to take the air. I to the castle will withdraw myself down some back way, and ever as we need, be this our meeting place till Antwerp bleed.
Farewell, my lord. Cornelius is agreed.
And they exit. What lovely people they are.
Why dost Cornelius talk about himself in third person?
Because that's what people do. That's a perfectly natural thing. Robert does it all the time. Robert does not see a problem with this.
Julie is confused.
Rachael.
Eric asked it in the chat, but I'm wondering it too. Is this a history play? Are we in a history play?
Oh, absolutely. The Siege of Antwerp did indeed happen in 1576, off the top of my head. I don't know that as a fact off the top of my head. I read it in a book earlier, and I need to check on a bit of paper whether that's the correct date, but somewhere around then. And yeah, it's that said, that doesn't mean this is a documentary. I think it would be fair to say that some bias may occur in where we go with this. But yeah, it has sources and everything. Actually, one of the sources is from the Spoil of Antwerp by George Gascoigne. A favourite author on our plate. Yeah, we're going to go back to that as a source material. I'm sure I can see it coming. We like a bit of gorgeous George. Angela, and then Eric.
Well, I was going to say on the history front that one of the reasons that these sorts of things would have been popular with Londoners is because the English did try to help the Dutch. Antwerp was not Dutch; it was part of the Spanish Netherlands then. But because lots of refugees came from Antwerp into England after the siege and the sack of Antwerp, so there was a great connection there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Sancto is basically just turning up and just going, right, I'm gonna raid this city because I need money. Basically, they've got money. Look at them having nice things. You see, think about all these these people. They've got soft with all their fine furnishings and clothes and things, so they'll be easy to take it down. That'll be easy. So he's a nice chap. Eric.
Yeah, I was kind of like thinking because at the beginning, it takes a while. It's a very slow burn, unlike other plays that we've done. Well, I mean, no, there are other plays that take forever to like. You get to the end of the play and it's still a very slow burn. But yeah, it feels a bit like it's trying to build towards like it's not the kind of Thomas Stukely kind of thing, or the tragedy of Alphonsus, the emperor, which were both very engaging right off the bat, I think. So I don't know, maybe it's just kind of very info heavy. I don't know, it just feels very strange as a text.
It sets its location up. It's be quiet here. There's people about. There might be witnesses. It's a clandestine meeting. So I think that's the thing. Is it needs a sort of closeness and a darkness to it, which on the public stage is not necessarily easy to do. But that's. But yeah, I quite like its slow burnness. It's there is a lot of data to take in here. But I imagine for the original audience, that's part of the appeal. Is they want, I said it wasn't a documentary earlier. There is an element of documentary to it in that sense, because that's where, we've got all these allies, we've got all this horse, we've got 1,000 horse, 500 foot, yeah. There's a city. It's going to get sacked. And they're setting up all the reasons why it's going to happen. And what they're going to do to scare the poor burghers. They're having a solemn banquet at the State House, and they're going to set off. They're going to fire at it, and put the fear of God into them all. They're having dinner. What sort of monsters are they? To fire on when they're having dinner. There's something should be sacrosanct. Any thoughts? I'm waiting for someone to wave at me. I'm just vamping here. No, nobody's got anything. Eric.
I can't remember if this is in the cost list, but is Cornelius another Spaniard, or is he kind of betraying Antwerp? Because the way it reads is kind of like he's a traitor, kind of. Yeah, but then because there's this whole basically this scene is Sancto going, "Are you going to help us? You better help us, or I'll." Yeah, do something really evil to you or something. Though he hasn't.
Cornelius Van End. So he's in charge of the garrison in theory. So yeah, this is betrayal. This is why they don't want anyone to overhear them doing all the plotty stuff.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Angela.
A quick check on the details, because it's a while since I've done the 16th century sack of Antwerp, is that it was mutinying. I think he does mention this earlier, that the Spanish soldiers were mutinying because they hadn't been paid. And so they sack Antwerp. So the whole thing is a a mutiny. Although interestingly, here they're suggesting that the Duke d'Alva, who's actually the governor, is in on it.
Well, Sancho is basically he's looking for money to pay his troops. That's the logic of this play.
That's right, but they should have been paid. But it's what I mean. This is not a documentary, so I'm just saying that it was a mutiny because they hadn't been paid. But here it's claiming that d'Alva was in on it. So in on the whole sack, in on this is the way that we're going to get our money and so on, by pretending he's dead and all that kind of thing. So I just thought that was quite interesting.
Be careful of potentially confusing two separate people, though. They're just because we've got Davila and we've got, or in this case, Danila, and we've also got d'Alva.
May I he mentions leading the Almines, which I'm assuming is a bastardization of Alemannia, which is Germany. And the German Landsknechts were soldiers for hire all over the place. So he could be the leader of a troop of mercenaries who had been paid to be there.
I think we're getting into too much historical detail of the play before we've got anywhere into the play. So I think we need to get more data before we travel any further in. I should have said, let's find out what the play wants to tell us rather than necessarily start confusing it with history, because then we might get into too much trouble. And also, we've only done one scene, so let's find out some more information. As we have a scene that effectively runs straight into from the previous, as we have Sancto again. Enter Sancto, Danila, and the gunner.
What ordnance have you laden on that part?
A falcon and 2 arquebuses of crock.
What tell'st thou me of harger butts of crock? Pox upon your rascal squibs and crackers. Have you been loading all this day till now, and come you with your harger butts of crock? A plague upon it.
My lord, blame your direction. Nevertheless, not full assured of your lordship's pleasure, we have raised the cannons that came last night from Haarlem, and planted them this morning for the purpose.
Was well advised, but gunner for what part?
That is, please your honour to direct.
That's for the State House, gunner, where the Dutch sit swelling in the pride of their excess. Commend us to them. Tell them we have sent music to make them merry at their feast. Go bid thy full-mouthed cannon make much good to doing them. Should we discharge some scurvy culverin, they'll think we're about some firework to make them sport with. For sure they fall asleep upon full stomachs. Shoot me their State House through both the sides, and tell them thou didst it for their health, to keep them waking.
I warrant you, my lord, I'll pierce their sides, or never think me a workman whilst I live.
I will not stir till I have heard the shot. Go, light thy linstock at some hellish brand, to send black vengeance to that hated town. At every corn of powder be a spirit, their immortal aim as ominous as death, and never a splinter that the bullet strikes, but let it prove a very murdering peace. Monster burghers at their banquetings, a vomit horrid plagues upon them all.
And the peace discharges. Bang!
There be thou like the club of Hercules amongst the boozing bacchanalian centaurs, to beat their rannish cans about their ears.
A great screech is heard within.
Good luck! Good luck, I hope. Hark, how the sudden noise encountering with the cannon's loud report stops his full mouth with their reverberant sound, and fills the circle of the empty air.
And the 2 burghers enter running.
That the shot was from the castle, questionless,
The smoke in the report may tell you so.
and certainly intended at our lives.
Call to the governor.
He's walking here without the castle. Stay. The citizens have sent me to demand, on what occasion, or by whose commandment, you have discharged this shot upon the town.
At my command, sir. What is that to you?
Then thy command, I tell thee, Sancto, is devilish and unchristian, which passing through the state house of the city hath slain 3 persons.
Oh, 3 frothy relish rats that have drunk dead, or in their cups have fallen to cutting throats, and fearing that it would be noised abroad to cover your foul bestial gourmandize, give it out to be a shot from the castle.
That men are slain will not expostulate. But, Governor, was it by your commandment?
Tell me, you men of Antwerp, if you just started at a cannon's burst, why suffer you the Prince of Orange's ships to ride upon the river at their pleasure? With their fleering tops to mock our fames, that the whilst the sconces which do bank the river serve but to fishers to unload their nets, whilst cankering rust devours your empty cannons, and they lie hulling up and down the stream. Burghers of Antwerp, answer me to this.
They be of Zealand, and the Prince of Orange hath ever been a friend unto the state.
But enemy unto the king, my master. Therefore they shall not ride upon the river, which if your own security do suffer, will make your banddogs to wake your town.
Is that the cause and reason of your shot?
Burgher, it is.
You should have sent us word of your dislike.
Why, so we did. Did you not send our post even now unto you and wrapped our packet in a ball of lead? I think we sent a bold ambassador that spoke our mind in thunder. Did he not? You might before have known of our dislike, but that we did perceive you would not see. 'Twas well you heard of us.
A signet sounded. Enter 2 with mourning pennons. A drum. Sounding a dead march. Alva carried upon a horse covered with black. Soldiers after trailing their pikes.
No, citizens of Antwerp, this is the cause that makes you careless and neglect our power. The death of Princely Alva, had he lived, the fleet of Orange had not traded thus, nor braved our castle.
And enter 2 or 3 citizens running.
I pray God they mean not to assault the town.
'Tis Dalva's body brought into the castle.
Have I forgotten to give out a 3rd citizen? No, I haven't. Julie, 3rd citizen.
I read it, I was muted. I forgot I was muted. I would he had come thus when he came first into these countries.
So would I. What's become of this damned fiend?
Let the devil look at that, for he has most right to him.
I would the cowhide were off, we might see the 4 quarters.
A plague go with him.
And there will be old triumphing in hell.
There will be old supping of boiling lead.
That Dalva was a bloody villain.
He was worse than the Spanish Inquisition.
Well, if ever man would have eaten up the cannibals, 'twas he.
I fear nothing but one,
What's that?
that the people will curse him out of his grave.
I am glad that they have cursed him into it.
Well, it was never heard that Alva was dead, but there was some notable villainy followed it.
What? Dost thou think he'll revive again?
If he do, the devil's on't, and I'll never trust death on a word for the halfpenny.
Come, we'll mourn and sack for him.
And exeunt the citizens.
Come, let's retire ourselves into the state house. 'Tis Dalva's body brought into the castle.
Exit Burghers.
March nearer to the castle with your hearse before you set it down.
What are those villains gone that railed upon me?
They are, my lord.
Sit down and let me light.
And indeed, yes, Alva from the hearse. He comes from under it. He's not dead, as we were told earlier.
I would not hear myself again so railed on, not for half Belgia. Swoons, the dogs bark at me, a plague upon them all. I think they do not hate the devil so. Dalva is never named, but with a curse. Think but these rogues, this is a time to die, and hear these damned dogs revile me thus. Well, I am dead, but Alva's spirit, ere long, shall haunt your ghosts, and with a fatal troop, come in the dreadful night about your walls. Grim death did ne'er affright the fearful marshal, as I will fright these boozing Belgians. Who's that above? Lord Sancto d'Alva?
My lord of Alva, enter the castle.
Alva enters and his troops. Enter Alonso Verdugo and his soldiers with a still march.
Oh, the Lord Verdugo and his regiment from Maastricht. 'Tis well.
Enter Julian Romero and his power with a still march.
Julian Romero and his regiment from Leyra. My lord Romero, where is Don Emmanuel to bring the power that we expect from Alft?
Who's that? Lord Sancto Danila? He's entered on the other side of the castle with all his power.
Not yet full 10, my mind presageth good. Antwerp ere night shall bathe herself in blood.
And end scene. So yeah, we have. I'd say that De Alva has Trojan horsed this party. He didn't really need to, so I'm wondering how necessary this action was, apart from to go ta-da. And to get to listen to people saying bad things about him after his reported death. I fear nothing but that the people will curse him out of his grave. And of course, Sancto did say he's caused it to be published that he is dead. Yeah, it's all a ruse. And yeah, the Burghers are really not happy about this whole shooting at them while they're having dinner. And by God, does Sancto really rub it in with all the wordplay there? I mean, my word, he just lays it on with a trowel, doesn't it? He's practically just sort of going budum ching at the end of every line. Get it? Get it?
I could be silly and ask who Omnis is. I'm just joking. Exeunt Omnis.
Other thoughts from the room? Eric.
Yeah, just Sancto's vocabulary is incredible. He goes from like the sort of talking about, I don't know, like just Hercules and all that stuff, and then also has sort of vomiting banquets and all that stuff as well. I don't know. It's just he's kind of. I'm fascinated by the language he uses. And even though he's a villain, he's kind of it's reminding me a lot of Battle of Alcazar, that kind of level of, I don't but that doesn't have as much of a flourish, I feel, in terms of language. But maybe that's just me.
He is incredibly florid. I mean, yeah, that thing about this gunner, please, in shooting, never a splinter that the bullet strikes, but let it prove a very murdering piece amongst the Burghers that they're banqueting, to vomit horrid plagues upon them all. I mean, it's you kind of want him to go muhahaha as the cannon fires. I mean, it's very Rachael.
The third citizen, they said there will be old supping of boiling lead. Just that, I mean, that coming right after the word hell, it really does feel like there's that evocation of hell on earth type imagery. I just thought it was a beautiful line. I think like you guys just said, Sancto gets some really great lines, but I think there's so much poetry that's being exercised here by the playwright, even and some of the other characters too.
Other thoughts, Eric?
Back to the whole sort of Battle of Alcazar idea is just because I think at the end of this scene you've got like the appearance of the troops, and obviously Battle of Alcazar also has the appearance of the troops going, sort of. I think that was the part where we struggled with on Zoom, where we were kind of like, well, how do you show that these guys are on the same side and how that they're going to charge at each other? Because it was like, yeah. But I don't know. And also, how many soldiers are we talking about? I mean, that's, Verdugo and Romero, we've been told like the size of their force. But I mean, obviously you're going to have like 5 people on stage, like 10,000 or however many they actually are.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good question, actually, how many actors are involved in this, because actually the fact we're reading this with a relatively small room, okay, we're doing doubling that you wouldn't do in a stage play, it doesn't actually require that many prime speakers, and I'm just wondering, is it just everybody else is still in the play, but they don't have as many lines, and they're just running around doing all the fighting and the stuff that's going to come later. I mean, a play we haven't mentioned, of course, is Massacre at Paris, which, again, features an awful lot of perhaps some of the material that we're going to get later on, and I'm wondering whether there's a parallel. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be very parallelly with, say, a part like the Guise in Massacre at Paris, but because Sancto seems much more florid in a different way than Guise was, so I'm not sure about that. Anyway, other thoughts, Rachael? No? Yes?
I was going to ask when did Tamburlaine come out? Because it hasn't been that violent yet, but I'm just wondering if it's in that sort of vein.
Oh, good 15 years earlier than this. Something like that. Over a decade. It's perfectly common. That kind of potential of violence here. I mean, actually talking about the potential of violence, just the way Sancto was talking in the first scene about what he's going to do to the city seems very much more like a personal physical attack on somebody rather than, it's a very violent image, actually, that seems, I say, more personalised than the more generalised sacking of a city. Any other thoughts from other people for a moment before I go to Eric? I'm just going to encourage other people who haven't been waving that maybe they'd like to wave. Your thoughts are valid too. Okay, Eric.
No, I was just going to ask, because Sancto's last line is not yet full 10. Does that mean it's not full? It's not 10 in the morning yet, and we've already made progress, or what?
It means the troops. He's got 10 different powers coming in with more troops. That's what he was telling Cornelius. It's not just going to be your 500 because I've got all these characters coming along, and that's who's just been turning up. Romero, Alva, who's come, of course, with his soldiers. That's how he's managed to sneak them in by pretending to be dead, and these others. So they're all arriving, all coming through different angles so that they're hidden from the citizens.
Yeah, so Alva has done a Trojan horse, but sort of inverted one. He's the Trojan horse, and they're all around the horse rather than inside the horse.
Well, he's bringing his own group of soldiers, isn't he?
Yeah. Okay, let's read scene 3. I'm sure it's going to be cheerful. Happiness will prevail. Enter Marques de Hever, Egmont, Champaigne, Cornelius Van End and his page, the English governor, and one Burgher.
Monsieur Champaigne, Great Antwerp's governor, will you refuse these fair and fresh supplies, sent from the Prince of Orange and the States, under our conduct for your city's guard?
Lord Marquis Havre, We reject them not, nor yet neglect the love of that great prince and our kind friend, the co-united states. But since we have no need of such a power, why should we pester Antwerp with such troops, to spend the victuals of the citizens, which we can scarcely compass now, for guilt?
The prince and the states will furnish you with store to feed the army and relieve the town.
It may be so.
And it may not be so.
Our words and honours be engaged for it.
Under correction, my Lord Governor, the Marques and Count Egmont's noble words, that the Prince of Orange and the state should be forgetful, were a pawn of worth.
What says the Colonel of the Almains to it?
This is Van Ann's opinion, my good lord, that the rich promise of such noble peers as Marques Helsby and the Count Egmont is pawn enough for all the city's wealth.
The Almain lies. Wealth is worth more than the words.
Standing aside.
I weigh their promise with my sound belief, and tie my thoughts to their assured trust. Yet are there many reasons of import to bar your army's entrance to this town.
The grand objection is decided.
True.
The lesser then are easily resolved.
Suppose the prince and states do victual them, yet their disorder in our civil streets may be pernicious and breed mutiny.
By this proposal you enfeeble us, and tax our worth with your indiscretion, as though our skill and our authority stood upon the base of weak discipline.
We said not so, and yet their riotings may taint our wives and rise our wealth.
In silence be it, my lord, you need them not.
All riots shall be death by martial law, and all commanders shall be vigilant over their troops, that order may be kept.
My lords of Egmont and of Helsby, what are your numbers?
Just 3,000 foot, 1,000 horse, and 800 at the least.
Honourable tender of true friends to send such aid for safeguard of our city.
Rachel?
Twill shake our bags too much to pay so many.
At whose expense shall all this army rest?
Some part yourselves, some part the prince will pay.
600 Alamains are our garrison, a guard sufficient to defend our walls, and men enough, because we need no more.
Rachel? I think you might be having some connectivity issues.
I think I am. Sorry. And they too many to be paid by us.
Oh, may these slaves refuse this succor sent. Their misery shall bring, no, their misery shall bring their misery.
Count Egmont, surely Antwerp is bewitched. Security hath slain their providence, and riches make them reckless of their friends. We must assume the charge upon ourselves, and pray the prince and states to bear the pay, or else their private avarice will pull public destruction on this flower of towns, to the disgrace of all the Netherlands.
I will make tender of so much then, 2 months to the Prince of Orange and to the States, and we ourselves will pay 4,000 men. If afterward our powers be not of use, we shall withdraw them to their provinces. May this content you, curious citizens?
The offer is so honourable now, as modestly we cannot challenge it. Captain Cornelius, what's your counsel?
This. Say that you fear the Spaniards will conceive some high displeasure if you take them in. My lords, these fat-pursed peasants are so proud, friends and defence are less esteemed than pelf.
Governor of Antwerp, how are you resolved?
My lords, the Prince of Orange and yourselves and all the states deserve our duteous love and humble service, first for sending power, then promising pay and victuals for that power. But with your pardon, yet there is a let that makes us loath to take your army in.
What's let Champaigne?
The Spanish governor, Danila, commander of the castle here, if we receive your troops into our town, will judge we have some purpose of revolt and raising arms against the King of Spain.
What if you do?
His fiery spirit enflamed will send out bullets from the citadel and tear the sumptuous buildings of our town.
As late he did when we were banqueting, and thought no harm, but drinking health to health, he shot and slew some innocent poor souls, and rent our state house and some buildings else.
He'll rend you... Sorry.
He'll rend you better if our purpose hold.
What was the cause?
Because we did not sink the Prince of Orange ships that lay to waft provision to our city up the river.
Observe by that, you discreet governors, what love or faith the Spaniard holds with you, that for his pride would have your city pine. Having destroyed the corn on Flanders' side and crossed a bridge of convoy to your town, then that the river should not victual you, he wished to sink that shipping in Scheldt.
Collect by this the Spaniard's cruelty, who, but though occasion should not come from you, would pick a quarrel for occasion to sack your city and suck your blood and satisfy his pride and luxury. That Haarlem, Maastricht, oft example you, and many cities models of his wrath. Think on my father and the county home, whose tragedy, if I recount with ruth, may move the stones of Antwerp to relent. They served the Spaniard as his liegemen sworn, yet for they did but wish their country good. He picked a quarrel and cut off their heads. Burghers, the Spaniard waits to take your lives, that he may spoil your town, your wealth, your wives.
Receive your friends, prevent his treachery, lest unawares you taste his tyranny.
What benefit, good countrymen, gain we? That prostitute our fortunes and our blood in your defence.
Say, shall we let them in?
In troth, I think the Spaniard means no harm.
Mean what he may, will not offend such friends as these, the Prince of Orange and the state. Your army is at Kibthorpe Port, you say?
There stay our forces.
We will let them in, and quarter them with all convenient speed. At Van End, draw up your Alamains to one place, and keep good rule for fear of civil brawls. And now, my lords, I will attend on you.
And exeunt Champaigne, Marques, and Egmont.
I will attend to lock and guard my doors, and keep my wealth, my wife, and daughters safe, for fear these hungry soldiers get a snatch.
Exit the first burgher. Remains Cornelius Van End and his page.
Jonker, come here. Haste to the castle wall, and call to speak with Sancto Danila. Tell him from me the flies begin to swarm, the sun grows hot, the herds do shake their horns. The shepherds bring great flocks home to the fold. Say, if the butchers slaughter not in time, the beasts will surfeit and the soldiers pine. Therefore begin before one glass be run, and we shall win ere setting of the sun. Remember this, be secret and away.
Exit boy.
Now, Antwerp, comes the Spaniards' holy day. With them join I, my share is in the gold. I run with the hare, and with the hound I hold. This Sunday shall be dismal to the town. The burghers die, their gallant wives go down.
As he is going out, Stump, or Stumpy, encounters him. they exit. More on that later. I like the bit at the end of the eagles fly at dawn. Boy, send this cryptic message that can be easily decoded. I wouldn't mind if he just
barking can't fly without umbrella.
Yeah. I mean, if he just said the flies begin to swarm, or something short, but he turns it into this ridiculously long message that's actually quite fiddly, and I'm just thinking the boy's standing there going, okay. Poor lad. So yeah, we've got this discussion of the defense of the town. The options are available. Who's willing to pay for it? As well, you don't get the impression that anyone wants to spend anything potentially on their defense, and the maneuvers. What would look good and what would look bad. If you bring people into the city, would that actually be used as an excuse to attack? And and will that bastard in the tower shoot at us again? It's a really interesting, and of course we've got Cornelius, who we know is a bad actor in this particular instance of working for the other side. Just goes, oh, I think the Spaniard means no harm. He's a lovely chap. He's fine, So yeah, there's a lot once again going on here about who's telling the truth, who's manoeuvring. Thoughts in the room? Greg as the Englishman. There as English.
Yes, that was a wonderful name, wonderful character name. It just seemed like a load of people posturing. I lost track of it's. Is there is it just me, or do I just feel like I'm listening to a bunch of names of porcelain talking at the moment? Or wine, because I'm losing track of who the hell is who and what they're doing. Because, yeah, I really like those first scenes with what's his face who I played earlier. I've lost track. And I like the Sancto, thank you. And I like the posturing towards the bloodshed.
I think the drama of this scene has got to be, that we know it's all coming. We know who in this room is going to be a betrayer. And we also know people are going to start making really bad decisions, or potentially make really bad decisions. It's important the audience knows what's going on and who's on what side. We have met the Burgher before, if it's the same one, I assume it is. We obviously know Cornelius, and I think that sense of a room full of people making potentially very bad decisions here, or not having any real choice. I'll go to Julie, then Rachael, then Angela.
Oh, it surprises me that because they fired the shots, you'd think that some of these people might take it more seriously, even though the shots were kind of laughed off as, an accident or whatever. But, because you got to scare people who feel safe before they'll actually pony up the cash to protect that safety. And it's kind of the way it always works throughout history. Oh no, we'd rather save our money, we're fine, don't worry, nobody's coming, and then, oh, save us, here's our money, as soon as there's actually an attack.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't believe that, it's just, it can't get worse. He doesn't mean it really. It's we have had, plenty of examples of that happening in history. But yeah, you would have thought firing at them would be a bit more of a provocation, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I've noted that Cornelius has gone from referring to himself in third person to referring to himself in third person with his last name.
Yeah, well, bring the changes. What's it? I was going to say. I can't remember. Rachael, then Angela.
The Burgher's last line, I think there's double entendre there that's so creepy. Like, but also I think the whole scene, I think there's a lot of fight for power between all these different political figures, and then you have the burgher who's there to represent the actual people, and he's like, but you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And I think it's I don't know, to show that the fight between governmental powers and that there's some corruption there or something, you know, maybe not just on Cornelius's part, or maybe not enough push on the opposition's part, again, you know, to take a stance that's equal to the one that's been taken against them by shooting into the State House.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of Burgher as sort of an Elon Musk, which is a bit of a stretch, but go with me on this, you know, he's not willing to pay for anybody else to be protected. But he's perfectly willing to. He's afraid enough for the situation to lock his doors, guard himself and his wealth and his family. But he's not willing to spend any money on the wider community, because he does say explicitly earlier, "'Twill shake our bags too much to pay so many." He doesn't want to pay for the troops to protect the town. They're happy for other people to come in and protect the town. They don't want to pay for it, and that they don't want to invest in that sort of thing. So
also, Rachel, yeah, you mentioned the burgher's last line as being dirty. So is Cornelius's last line as he exits. Everybody expects a whole lot of something after the battle.
Yes, though I'm not 100% certain on the dating of some of the double entendres there, but in a modern production, I think that would definitely be there. Angela.
Now, I'm sorry. I think I mean, it's interesting to see how people are hearing this, because I'm really not hearing it like this, and that might be because I am aware of the context. And because the people who are listening to it would totally be aware of the context originally. And I realise we're not talking about that necessarily. I mean, for a start, Egmont is a huge, huge Protestant hero. And everybody that's listening to this knows exactly who he is.
We haven't mentioned him yet at all, so yes, it's nice to hear about him.
Right, well, you know, so because he is martyred, ultimately, and is this great Protestant hero, along with Horn. The other guy here isn't Horn, so that's quite interesting. I don't know why that is. But the other thing is that they are really afraid. They are under the power of the Spanish king. And they are already, you know, they are afraid that they've been shot at. They do go and challenge and say, why did you do that? So I don't agree that they're not afraid. That's the whole point. They're so terrified. They don't know whether to allow, you know, the northern part of the Netherlands to come in, because they all know that northern part of the Netherlands is fighting the Spanish. So it's a horrible cleft stick that they're in. And I agree that the burghers are mean. The time told us that at the beginning, that, you know, this is what happens if you care too much about your gold. Although ultimately they do give in. They say, yes, do come. But it's also because they're being taxed to smithereens, you know, by the Spanish as well. You know, they're already having to pay for that garrison. But of course, then they're possibly not paying enough, or the garrison just want more. That's why they're going to come in and they're going to take that money. They've said that's what they are going to do. So I mean, so I'm following it. I don't agree with Greg, and I am following it, and I think there's an enormous tension here. But it may be because that's how, you know, I'm seeing it in that context rather than from the words itself. So it's quite fascinating, actually.
I don't think it's not coming from the words. I do think it is there. I just think it needs to be performed in that sense. You know, with you know, it's the problem with the cold read is you're not getting the performance of these. I mean, I've only been focusing in on the burgher here because that was just the thread we were following at that point. Because there are slightly differing voices about what do we do next. And I think you're absolutely right. There isn't a good solution here. They're going through all the options of what they can do, and with their budget, as it were, which is where I say I kept referring to the burghers. Eric, then Rachael.
Yeah, this scene reminded me of, I think it's the second or third scene of Alphonsus, where I mean the Emperor of Germany one, where you kind of have all the, it's like a board meeting where they're discussing who's going to take power. Obviously, this is a different context, but it's kind of, it's got that it has the tension. It just needs to sort of come across as sort of, what are we going to do? I mean, we've been fired on. Now what? What can we possibly do?
Rachael, then we will move on.
Yeah. Maybe this is also the catch-22 that a nation who's had a sort of military coup has to deal with, because this is they're dealing with the idea of bringing in foreign forces, you know, to battle their own, I guess, people, even if it's because they've sworn to the Spanish king. I don't know, maybe it's something like you have in Myanmar right now, because I think last year their president was they had a military coup. I don't know. The calling somebody in is just adding to invasion in a certain way. Or is that going to help, you know, when the whole chain of government is sort of falling apart?
Yeah. What do you do when you've got potentially invading forces? Do you, you know, if you bring lots of army men into your city, that is going to create lots of problems. And that's on top of the problems that you already have about potentially armies sitting on your doorstep that you know are probably not nice people. Anyway, we've got lots and lots of stuff, and we've only done 3 scenes. So, scene 4, enter Burgher, Champaigne, and their wives.
Before, good wife, I fear that all's not well. Monsieur Champaigne, what's your opinion?
Doubtless the Spaniards do intend some hurt. Hark, how the tumult still increases.
Is wife and lady the same? Sorry.
No, they are different. They are distinct in different individuals. Julie, I think you're muted.
Yes, I muted myself again. For shame, be not so fearful. Say that for some offence, either commenced or but in conceit, the Spaniards were maliciously inclined. Have ye not soldiers to withstand their force? What should you need to be solicitous? Keep ye within.
Nay, wife, thou dost mistake if thou imagine we intend to fight. 'Tis not our meaning. We are at the charge to pay them monthly, wherefore should they... wherefore, 'tis not our meaning. We are at the charge to pay them monthly, wherefore should not they be at the care to see the city?
The city's safe enough without their care. Will you to dinner?
Wherefore shoot they thus, unless there were some villainy abroach?
Wherefore shoot they but to try their pieces? I warrant you, husband, 'tis no otherwise.
Enter Marques with his sword drawn.
Here comes the Marquis. He can tell the news.
The cause, my lord, of this intestine uproar?
The cause is murder, misery, and death. You men of Antwerp, if with all the speed and expedition that men remains, you take not weapons to repulse the foe, that like a swarm of deadly stinging hornets have all this while lay hid within their nest, but now do fly abroad with dreadful noise, as if so many furies were awakened. To arms, then, all that love our country's peace.
How do ye mean, my lord? Or who are those your lordship shadows underneath the name of swarming hornets?
Are you so dull of sense, and still so lulled in your security? Whom should I mean but bloody Danila, and furious Alva, his compare in arms, that fill the castle yard with their battalions, and strive to take possession of your streets. To arms, then, straight, if you will keep them back.
And exit the Marquis.
Is't like that Alva is revived again?
It's like as he intends to take the town.
But I suspect there is some treachery.
Will ye believe his words? He doth but jest. To try how we will take if it were so.
Nay, by his looks and by his sudden haste it would appear the Marquis doth not jest.
Enter Egmont and Stump.
To arms! To arms! Oh, where's the governor? Give order that your citizens prepare to stand upon their guard, defend themselves, for whom you trusted turns his weapons point upon your bosoms. All the old main force is quite revolted, and the enemy entering your streets. Van End, that damned slave, gives aid to Spain, and with his traitor's hand draws in destruction if you look not to it.
Where are the Switzers should supply the trenches?
Drunk in their lodgings, and in reeling forth the Spaniards unresisted murdered them. For honour's sake, for wretched Antwerp's sake, stand not amazed, but with courageous hearts and forward hands fight for your liberty.
And exit Egmont. Are yet your eyelids open? Are you yet awaked out of the slumber you were in? Or will you lie snorting in your sloth? Be still persuaded you are safe enough, until the very instant you do feel their naked swords glide through your weazened pipes? Or do you think with belching puffs that fly from your full paunches you can blow them back? Or is the bottom of a deep carouse able to drown them? Will their fury melt at the beholding of your dainty wives? Or can submission be a stickler in these hot brawls? I tell ye, burghers, no. Fair words will be as oil to burning pitch, and gold as sulphur to enkindled flames. Your daughters' chastity must quench their lust, and your dear wives enrich their lawless arms. I said as much, but would not be believed. Now tell me if I prophesied aright, or that my zealous words deserved rebuke. Did I not say the crocodile did weep but to obtain his prey? The sea looks smooth but for a storm. Would anything be thought by the close confluence of the Spanish troops into the castle but some massacre? Yet was I rated to object as much, reviled and baffled for my loyalty.
I prithee, soldier, leave thy bitter words, and help to fight for Antwerp's liberty.
You have another groat to give me, then? I know your liberal minds will scorn to impose the sweat of bloody danger on the brow of any man, but you'll reward him for it. He shall at least, when he have lost his limbs, be sent for harbour to a spittle house. Now say ye, shall he not? Good reason then, but we should venture, yes, to laugh at you, whilst we behold the Spaniards cut your throats. An object base mechanic set at work, a sweaty cobbler whose best industry is but to clout a shoe, shall have his fee. But let a soldier that hath spent his blood, is lamed, diseased, or any way distressed, appeal for succour. Then you look askance, as if you knew him not, respecting more an ostler or some drudge that rakes your kennels than one that fighteth for the Commonwealth.
It is thy country that doth bind thee to it, not an imposition we exact.
Binds me my country with no greater bonds than for a groat to fight. Then for a groat to be enfeebled or to lose a limb, poor groat's worth of affection, well, I'll learn to pay my debt and to measure my desert according to the rate. A groat I had, and so much as a groat amounts unto you, my sword shall pay ye in exchange of blows. Exit Stump. Enter 2 citizens.
Citizens, how now?
Oh, Monsieur Champaigne, we are undone for want of discipline.
The Spaniards hurry into every street. What shall we do for safeguard of our lives?
What shall you do? stand every man at's door, and take in's hand a halbert or brown bill, and study to defend him as he may.
I hear them coming. Let us shift away.
And they exit. Oh, there's Stump's an interesting addition. I don't recall him popping in and saying, I told you earlier in the play, but hey, maybe we missed that. But he does put forward a really nice thing about, you're happy for us to go out and fight, but nobody's happy to pay for us after the fighting's done. No tribute for veterans, is there? No, I'm not bitter. Pay me. You want me to fight? Pay me. Angela.
It is weird that he's playing some part of the scene, but he's not there. But there was a minute where he appeared, and then he just went off. So it feels like there's something missing. There's pages missing out of the text where he gets to say something, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's like he missed the meeting and he bumps into somebody in the street and he goes off on one or something. Maybe he went off on one.
He does appear. He appeared, didn't he?
Yeah, he appeared. It's immediately after the last scene. He encounters Cornelius. So maybe he said all this to Cornelius earlier, which was a stupid move because he's the one who betrays everybody.
Oh right.
And you're right. There's nothing there. All we have is this random stage direction. As he is going out, Stump encounters him. That's all we got. It's really bizarre. Does feel like something's missing there.
And also because if you look at that point, right, and then you've put in scene, then it says scene 4, and then Champaigne says, doubtless the Spaniards do intend some hurt, and you feel as if there ought to be something. Somebody must have said something to him to say, what are you thinking of? They're really threatening. The only people that have said that is the English person.
Well, I think at this point, in between scene 3 and 4, what you've got is bang, bang, rattle, rattle, clatter, and people screaming off stage. I think that's there should be a Larum noted in there or something similar. There may also be an additional scene or something to introduce Stump in a proper way. But that seems to be everybody's running on with swords and going, they're to arms, to arms, to arms. So, because they're just sort of going, oh, it's a bit noisy, so I don't think it can be too much. They're sort of coming on, oh, it's a bit loud, a bit Larry tonight. So, yeah. Other thoughts? Eric, are you waving or just lifting your hand in an upward fashion?
A bit of both. I'm just wondering about the first bit where the Burgher turned up when you didn't tell us sort of that you were going to attack. We wanted mail, and then you kind of, proper informed stuff. But then, by this point, they kind of are getting ready for it. But they have to choose camps as well, even within the same city, which is fascinating. And then Stump comes on and goes, I'm pissed off. I have one leg. And I'm assuming. And you guys are falling asleep on the watch. It just kind of seems a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that the Burgher is trying to reassure everybody that everything's fine. It's okay. We've done some bribing. It's okay. We're going to paying some people, and of course, the people they've paid are all drunk and incapable. Possibly because you've just paid them lots of money. That's never happened with an army before. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a momentum. There is a sense of, the preparations have occurred. The defence has not been adequately put together. Nobody's quite knows what to do. The only person who does know what to do is presumably Stump, and nobody's listened to him, and nobody's listened to Egmont either. I did wonder in part of me was, is it actually Egmont in disguise? And we're going, no, he's in the room at the same time, so it can't be him. I was sort of thinking, is Stump just somebody else? He's just, just put a tin hat on, and therefore he's someone totally different. Rachael.
I was gonna say, I wonder if Stump has some. I mean, I feel like he's expressing some sort of PTSD or something like that. And if this is the sort of thing like, he was done with he was done with his duties or his call of, or what do they call them? To one of his tours or something, and got called back for another one, without wanting to go or something like that, and maybe to potentially fill that space that there, if you were to put this on, seems to have been left in the text between scenes 3 and 4, maybe just to build that up if you wanted to keep those little bits.
I mean, it might not be. There might not be a gap. It might just be that Stump is just someone who's just, he might even be slightly drunk himself, just coming straight on and just railing at everyone, going, "See." Because it's a very powerful sort of thing that he's saying there about, nobody looks after the soldiers. You shun the soldiers after the war's over. I suspect at different points when this might have been staged that was very relevant, because that's certainly coming up. Tom.
Yeah, he is the voice. He's the counter to all of these burghers and colonels and marquises and things like that. He's the man, the man from the street, the voice of reality that sort of like goes, you talk fine words and you live well, but when the going gets tough and the hacking and the hewing and the blood and the guts and everything is spilt, which is about to happen, So, he's the counterpoint. He's the common voice, which everybody would be going, yeah, see, he might be rough and ready and lowly and things like that, but he's right.
Yeah, he's very much a truth teller at this moment. We need to move on, but Rachael, very briefly.
I was also going to say, I think this is very interesting because I don't know if we know Stump's rank, and he might just be a common soldier, and at the same time we have him talking to the burgher, and the amount of stage time that they're both getting, and that we have these people without high military rank or not high aristocratic rank, even if they're wealthy, having these serious conversations and discussions about the system and the state of their country is very interesting.
Yeah, it's very telling that they say fight for us, and Stump said, "Well, pay me," and the Burgher's response is, "Do it for your country," kind of thing, and it's like, yeah. Do it for your town. So anyway, we need to move on. Scene 5. There is some A Laruming occurring. It was in the title. We've definitely got the occurrence of some A Larums. In the A Larum, Alva and Sancto de Villa pursue Marques Havre and Count Egmont furiously.
Marquis de Havre, stay. Thou canst not scape.
Sorry. And stay, Count Egmont. Dinida's conquering sword pursues thy life. Therefore abide and yield it.
Insatiate Alva, that like sun-rift ground never sufficed with sweetest showers that fall, but with 1,000 mouths agape still for more, so thy desire of blood ne'er satisfied, which with the rich tribute of so many lives, whose guiltless blood hath dyed poor Belgians' cheeks, and changed her like a drunken bacchanal, still with 1,000 quenchless appetites, doth first thirst for more, as if that by that epitaph were the sole object of thy heart's best hopes. No, tyrant, Marques Havres flies thee not, as fearing all the uttermost thou canst, but the oppression of unequal power, false treason that betrayed our lives to thee, and the sharp scourge that found security hath justly thrown on Antwerp's wilfulness.
These are the sluices that have brought on us the swelling pride and tyranny of Spain, which Antwerp, careless of, although forewarned by many bleeding instances about her, could not, nay, would not be advised at all. Tell me but this, Alva and Danila both, what state is there, be it ne'er so popular, abounding in the height of fortune's gifts, and all felicities of worldly pomp, that sees sad desolation in tears upon her neighbour cities? War's keen edge hath furrowed through their entrails, let them blood in every artery that maintaineth life. It will not dread her danger to be near, but warm her at their fires, sing at their sighs, reveling in her countless vanities, as a perpetual date were set thereon. Tell me, I say you that have seen all this, and as devils, saints in the black calendar of wretchedest woe, that may be truly set down as authors of these sad confusions, do you not deem that hate well worth the ills that this remissness brought upon the rest?
They cannot but confess so much, Count Egmont.
If this be granted, what's your glory then? An armed man to kill a naked soul, 1,000 sickles thrust into a field of summer ripened and resistless corn. Mighty tide to overrun a land where no defense or bank to keep it back. This is your honor, this their misery, that are not conquered but die willfully.
War taketh hold on all advantages.
What need advantages where there is no resist?
So much the better. This is our discipline. Therefore, submit or die.
Not while I have a hand to lift my sword.
Nor you, Count Egmont.
Alva nor I, Egmont will with honor both live and die.
As in A Larum again, and Champaigne is pursued by Romero, Verdugo, and Cornelius van End, where he is slain. So is the Marques, Haverer, and all engirding Count Egmont. Alva steps in to defend him, and they strike at him.
Hold when I bid ye. Strike ye all at me.
Why stands thou then to guard an enemy?
Because I will. Honor incites me to it, the honor of this worthy nobleman, and his high spirit even in the face of death. Yield thee, brave Egmont. Alva doth entreat thee, in pity of thy bold adventurous youth, and hopeful fortunes shining in thine eyes. Thou seest thee slain, yet will I save thy life. Thou seest me wounded to preserve thy life. I, that was never pitiful before, am forced to pity thee. What wouldst thou more?
Such pity, Alva, as thou showedst my father, a noble horde, such thou intendest to me. Therefore proceed, and ne'er pity me.
They offer at him again.
Strike not, I charge ye. Come, Egmont, come. I swear that thou shalt yield. Strike. Spare me not. Alas, thou art too faint.
Striving to get again his weapons.
Come, yield thee now. I' faith, I will not hurt thee. So, have done. Nay, no more weapons, thou art my prisoner, and I will use thee very honorably.
Alva, let forth my life, for then thou honorest me.
Not for the world. Prisoner thou shalt to Spain, and there be entertained to thy deserts. Now pity, pack from Alva's heart again. Against my nature once I looked on thee. For this count's sake, now to the deserts fly. For havoc, spoil, and murder now I cry.
And they exit. So we have a sort of come and have a go if you think you're hard enough sort of sequence, followed by some actual on-stage fighting stuff with people running about and killing each other. I think Champagne's dead. Is Champaigne dead? It was that stage direction I read rather quickly, and I didn't fully unpack it. I think he's the one slain. He's pursued by Romero and Verdugo and Cornelius, where he is slain. So I'm assuming that Champaigne dead. So is the Marques as well. But they Egmont, they keep fighting at him. They keep sort of stabbing, fighting, but they don't want to kill him. They want to just stop fighting. Stop fighting us. Just surrender. And they won't. He won't surrender until he begs for death. But they drag him away in chains, presumably. I think that's where I am. Am I right on the death count? 2 dead, 1 captured. Any disagreements on that? I mean, we'll find out if they pop back up again later. Just go ta-da, then I'm obviously wrong. But yeah, fight with honor. Yeah, but they don't trust these honourable people. Any more? Otherwise, we've got one more scene to complete before we close the session. Angela, you are now in charge of the stage directions because it's all a little too complicated, I think. Maybe it isn't, actually. Maybe that would have been fine.
Okay.
This is lady, not wife, right?
This is indeed lady, not wife. They are 2 distinct and different people.
Scene 6. Champagne's wife hurried by 2 rascal soldiers.
Have mercy on a woman, I beseech you, as you are men and soldiers. If you be Christians, do not do me shame.
Search her.
Swoons, turn her inside outward.
Ransack her, every part of her.
Enter Stump.
For manhood, spare me.
They stand to search her.
How nimbly death bestirs him everywhere, and I that am aweary of my life, and would fain die, I cannot. Death is so proud, he will not look on me. These muddy rogues that hoarded up their coin, now have their throats cut for the coin they have. They that for 2 pence would have seen me starve, and still my old rotten Stump and I trot up and down as long as we can wag.
They begin to strip her.
As you are men, be merciful to me.
All lots, who shall have her?
I'll give thee my share for thy part.
I'll have my share in her.
Off with her jewels.
Now, 2 soldiers ransacking a woman. Oh, 'tis Champagne's wife that was the governor. Here is she that would not have seen with a moth upon her for £1,000, but spent as much on monkeys, dogs, and parrots as would have kept 10 soldiers all the year. Blood I've seen her where I have passed by her in the streets to stop her nose with her sweet gloves, for fear my smell would have infected her. And now I live to see her lugged and torn by lousy tottered rogues. Oh, Antwerp, Antwerp, now Madam Marchpain minks your blows, and you are one.
Let's have her in the next corner.
Draw her along.
Take that she has, it is sufficient, but go no further. It is inhumane to abuse a woman.
What rogue art thou, darst speak unto a Spaniard?
No rogue, sir, but a soldier as you are. And I've had 1 leg more than I have now.
Pointing to his leg.
Sir, here's my passport. I've known the wars, and I've had the vantage of as fair a spoil as you have here.
Away, you whoreson cripple rascal.
You tottered, shake-ragged rogues, what domineer you? If Dalva's self were here, he should not do it.
He draws his sword, kills one, and the other fly.
Good soldier, here's 1 jewel that they have not, that I do value at 1,000 crowns. I pray thee take it.
What should I do with it? Can you tell? To have my throat cut for it? No, your sister mince-pie's groat will do me no pleasure now.
For God's love, as you ever did respect a woman, help to convey me to some place of safety.
Where is it? Not in Antwerp. Your closet will not serve your turn. You cannot walk to your garden house.
Oh, for God's sake, help me as you are a man.
Well, follow me. I'll do the best I can.
A company of rascal soldiers came here, pursuing the lady. He fights and bears her away from them all.
There's an interesting juxtaposition of things. On the one hand, he does sort of do the right thing here. On the other hand, he's a really miserable sod still, isn't he?
Yeah.
There was a part when I was doing that first speech where I was sort of going, and the second speech even, of you just going, oh, he's just going to stand there and watch. I mean, I thought this is going to be horrific. I'm quite glad that he did his Errol Flynn thing and, fought off all the soldiers. But, yeah, something very dark about him. I mean, it's a very dark scene, full stop. Eric, then Rachael.
Well, the thing is, it's what Rachael said earlier, that he's sort of PTSD disillusioned soldier, so there's no glory for him in war, which is very interesting in itself. And it kind of, like, he sees no point in it. Like, what is he going to get out of violence, but more violence kind of thing.
And, the money she offers is worthless to him because he's like this massive jewel and going, well, I'm never going to be able to sell this realistically, am I? Someone's just going to fight me for it. It's actually more of a liability than it is a reward. And this is someone who has basically denigrated him in the street previously because, he's... So that's nice. Rachael.
No, I think in the actual book, like Catch-22, there is a scene similar to this, but I don't remember who it is, what chapter it's in, so I don't remember which character exactly it is, but in the end, they don't stop to help the woman. They just walk past them, and it's a certain, I think there's a certain level of violence that having fought before that he's grown accustomed to. And I think that because he personally recognizes her and that he has a personal recognition of her, if he had not recognized her and she was just a woman he didn't personally know, that he might have just continued on. But that he, maybe, I don't know, but you know what, maybe that's not a thing, but I think because he does know her in his actual life and she's not a stranger to him, that maybe that's what sways him in the end to do the right thing. Or maybe I'm just not in as bitter a text as when I'm reading Catch-22.
I don't know. I felt it was more the other way around. The fact that he knew her, actually, that was swaying me towards, he's going to leave her to their mercies. If it was a random person in the street, I thought he might be more inclined to step in. I mean, this is all, on very little data here. Julie.
On just for the language, I really liked where he compares the city to marchpane, and how it just kind of crumbles.
Yeah.
It just fell apart like marzipan.
Tom.
Stump is a well-accomplished fighter who's disillusioned, bored, but he's so good. He goes, I can stand and watch this, but tell you what, lads, come on, leave her alone.
Yes, just robber.
Yeah, because I'm a soldier like you. In fact, look, I've lost a leg. And they turn on him. He kills the first one. The other one runs off, and then he fights a load of other people. So I think he's a very martial spirit, albeit jaded and dishonored and depressed because he's been left in the street. But he's certainly very martial. There's certainly a lot of prowess in his fighting.
Oh, absolutely, and yes, we have confirmation that Stump does indeed refer to his loss of a leg, presumably in battle. Yeah, and yeah, quite a fighter there. Eric, then Rachel.
What I find interesting is that the scene starts off with the Champagne's wife and the soldiers, and then it's like a cutscene. Basically, it's like you can see them on opposite ends of the street if this were a film, which doesn't usually happen in early modern stuff. I mean, as far as I can remember, it's like, you know, you've got the lady and the first soldier and second soldier over here, and then cut to Stump who's coming down the street, and then cut back to the lady and soldiers, and then yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating way that the scene is set up.
Yes, because it's a really uncomfortable, you know, because all the time he's speaking, they are presumably stripping her of her clothes and jewellery and preparing her for assault. So, you know, how, you know, and that's something to find in rehearsal, and also, you know, this is a very, increasingly we're getting to the more difficult subject matter here. You know, how I spoke Stump quite quickly because I'm going, I don't want to linger this thought that's going on in the background, but you know, how long does it physically take for that action to be happening? How fast should that speech be going? Because, you know, if he really slows it down, then you have that dual effect going on at the same time.
Yeah, I felt really uncomfortable, even though nothing was happening to me. There was a moment I was going, "Will you just shut up and rescue me, or tell them to kill me, or something?"
Yeah. That does seem to be a very deliberate effect that's being played here, you know. Angela.
I think this scene, you know, because now we would know this scene is coming. I think this reflects back on the earlier scenes where women are mentioned, because the threat to women at war was just huge. And so this idea of protecting wives and daughters and soldiers threatening women, that was a constant in war. And so that's the spirit in which all those things are said about wives falling, women falling. There's nothing funny about it. There's no humour. So far, there's been no humour in this.
There's no
And I think that's the thing that's really quite striking. Whereas you're accustomed to somewhere there being a little bit of light relief, but there's nothing.
No, absolutely not. And again, going back to that language that Sancto was using at the in the beginning about you know, attacking the city and being a very physical, you know, personalized assault. You know, this is the kind of assault that actually that's lingering towards. And there's all sorts of questions about other business that's going on here. The sense of setting up a city. I mean, as we go into that question about how would you stage this, you know, staging Antwerp. How do you? Because it's the city as a whole as well as the people within it, and you know how this is put together, and also, you know, what is the function of a play like this? Beyond just wallowing in an awful lot of people dying. We may not be able to answer that question until we do the second half of the play. But, you know, all sorts of questions about, you know, why are we presenting these effects? Rachael.
I was also going to say, in terms of stakes, I think you could play this scene with Stump dragging that out quite a lot, because for everybody else, I think there is some sort of agony in this scene. But I think there's some sort of like Buddhist walk that he's doing. Like there is some sort of like in the Spanish tragedy, when how we have the ghost show up in the revenging ghost. Or is it called Revenge, or is it the guy from
Revenge,
the first play who dies? Yeah.
No, it's literally Revenge.
He feels like a ghost character from one of those tragedy plays. Or one of the Furies from Tancred and Gismund or Cupid, that the stakes for them are low and there's some sort of disconnect for them. And we see him, you know, denying, denying greed and denying these other things. And even though he calls himself a soldier, he's not, that he only has one leg would say something that he can't really fill that niche anymore. And he might be having trouble figuring out to move into another occupation, both because there's a whole war going on and a whole and he can't get another occupation, and also he can't fill the other one, but at the same time he's still a good fighter, and it really feels like he's on some sort of Buddhist or Zen walk, and that it's only at the last minute that he comes back in a certain way, and has some humanity and sees the humanity in this other person and connects with them. Even the soldiers are risking something, they're risking their lives even though they don't know it, and they think they aren't in this scene until Stump shows them that they are. And sort of that flip of fortune that we have in other plays happens here.
And at some point he will get a name, though he effectively has this sort of denigrating sort of title. He does actually I don't know whether the play gives that or whether it's just the stage directions give us a more expanded name for him, but we will find out more about him later on. But that's for next time. We're about to go into final thoughts, but so I'm going to go to Eric first. Any final thoughts from you, as well as anything you were about to say?
I was just going to mention that it's interesting how here you've got soldiers going, search her, Zuns, turn her inside outward, ransack her, every part of her. But like all this in the previous scenes, in the previous 5 scenes, we've had all the references to her being to the city of Antwerp as well. So, which just creeped me out incredibly. I was like, please don't make me watch this. I don't want to. It just was very uncomfortable to be here watching that or reading that, I guess. This play is fascinating because it kind of just went from history, and then suddenly action, and it's like, oh god, what on earth are we doing now? And then suddenly this, I think as soon as Stump enters and starts speaking, he starts throwing the play off because basically that's when they've descended into war.
Well, it's not even war. This is slaughter, and it's the same question we have with Massacre of Paris. I can imagine very easily how to stage this. I think a more important question is, what is the purpose of a modern production for something like this? There is partly history. These horrors of war do occur, this actually increasingly has a certain documentary quality to it that is potentially there. That isn't so the play itself doesn't have a huge amounts of spin against certain people and for others. I'm not necessarily questions we can answer today, but I'm throwing them in generally. Greg, any final thoughts?
Really interested to see how it continues. So I like a good history play. I think the scene that stood out for me most was actually that last one for some reason. And Stump is definitely intriguing as a person. So far, we've only seen a stump of his character, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see more if he does appear for more.
Oh, he will return. He will return. I'm really interested in the politics of it all, actually. I in many ways, just on a practical level of making it clear to an audience what's going on in those first 4 scenes or so, before we get to the action where it's a lot more straightforward what the hell's going on. Because I think there is a lot to unpick there, some of which is quite complicated, some of which isn't, and I think that's going to be the challenge further down the line. Angela, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought this was I think the whole thing is really incredibly moving. And because I can't think of it as anything other than being played at the time, I think exactly the complexities of those politics were still absolutely part of life when it was played, and will have been part of their lives right through until 1648. This goes on for 80 years. This all these disputes and these wars and everything. So it's kind of incredible, but I'm astonished at the shortness of the dialogue and the speed with which everything kind of like moves on in that play. I mean, it just seemed incredible, and the tension to me that is potentially there. It's an incredibly emotional play, it seemed to me.
Yes, I mean, it's not a long text. It is one where I'm sitting here going, well, especially when you're talking about emotion, about the intensity of it all, I wouldn't want an interval. I would like to run it through, and I think it is short enough for that to be practical without being too painful for an audience in terms of physical comfort. Whether emotionally, that's a separate kettle of fish. Julie, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, this one thing with this scene, I wanted to point out that, the old phrase that if one person dies, it's a tragedy. If 1,000 people dies, it's a statistic. And so rather than try to stage 1,000 people dying on stage, they show you one woman's plight and bring it home very personally in this scene, and particularly. And that I thought was very, very a really good way to do it, because you clearly can't put 1,000 people on stage, but you can show one potential horrible indignity.
Especially, following on, that occurs to me, following on from sort of noble fightingness of some of those upper orders to something that's much more street level kind of stuff. In a sense, the scenes are similar, but they're very different. And I think there might be more juxtaposition to come as well. Tom, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. But I thought the final scene is fabulous, because it reflects the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. These fat burghers who would spend more on the donkeys and zebras and puppies and not protect themselves, all of a sudden are literally stripped bare to reality and the consequences of just a life of luxury, with all their jewels and finery. It comes to this. So that last scene, as Julie and Eric have mentioned, is like a microcosm of reflecting back on the whole thing of Antwerp itself.
Yeah,
so it's beautifully put in there. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's a really good point, actually, just about the visualness of it all. The costumes for, these burghers and their wives here, they need to be sumptuous for this scene to work, because those sumptuous fineries have to be removed. Regardless of how you set it, that level of opulence is probably important there. So elements of this show might not be cheap. You might need to push all your money into the costuming, because if these characters don't look fabulous, then it possibly won't work. Rachael, any final thoughts?
If we get to do a second look of this, if there's maybe also a chance to do a scene workshop during that time, or a character workshop during that time, I would love to do to come back and focus on Stump, because I think there's so much richness there. And I agree with everybody else. This last scene has been fabulous. The scene where the burghers are trying to bring themselves together to fight for the city, I think that's also wonderful, because if we were in another play, I think that would be a huge heroic come together of the whole city, but it's not. It's just showing how much everything's falling apart for these people, that they don't have the ability or the training to come and protect themselves. And I think for an audience, I think if you talked about modern day issues, I mean, Crimea is getting annexed now, so that's one part of a country being, or it's been annexed, and that's one part of a country separated from the rest of it. Or even like how back in the day there was East Germany and West Germany, and if they were in such a situation between such things, that I think there's a lot of refugees and things like that, and people who've had political, issues in their country during this period, that might see something of their power structure in this. Oh no. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed. Oh my gosh. Did I not say the crocodile did weep, but to obtain his prey? Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.